Okay, so you talked about compromise, and you also talked about getting along in society and whatever, kind of along those lines. How do we, as we're presenting this, also get along? Uh, Step one, you go in steps. You have to be realistic. So I suggest that as you get up in the morning, you use deodorant. Okay, that would get you along to a certain point until it runs out during the day. But compromise, okay, what does that really mean? What does compromise really mean? So, again, uh, what makes sense? All right. So when we look at the idea of compromise, we'll just take the example of, the industrial, complex that exists on the earth, and it's creating all the poisons and pollution, and the refineries for the oil and stuff like that. And so people all of a sudden they can't breathe, they can't, anything, and they're being affected by this. And so the oil companies come up and say, okay, people want to compromise. It's like, okay, well, cut it down to 50%. I remember the old commercials of Standard Oil when I was watching TV 15, 20 years ago. And maybe some of you saw this, especially the older folks here. Probably 30 years ago or so, even longer than that, 40 years ago, they were saying, they made these cute little commercials saying that, oh, we're doing our part for the environment and the air. We're putting less particles out there, and we're doing our part, etc. I'm sure some of you have seen these. And realistically, you can look at that and think, oh, from the personal mind, oh, they're doing less harm. This is all good. Is it? They're still harming the environment. So again, when it comes to compromise and what we're presenting here, I've looked at this too, and I constantly look at what I'm presenting to the world. What do? Do I just say nice little things? And I've done that too. I've done some parables. I've done different things just for the fun of it. Done a variety of things, and people can take it for whatever it's worth. But the end result is that just like the vaccines children are getting, they can market them any way they want to make them sound really good, like GMO food, but the end result is what they really do. So what is being presented here, and I would say realistically, like the sun shining, I'm not interested in compromising. In other words, if the social systems from politics to religion to education, spiritual science, and so on said, well, Duane, we see what you're writing here, we see what you're presenting, and we see the influence that you're having. Can you in some way compromise with us accordingly? And that would be like all the people that are taplining and polluting everybody, and that I would in some way kind of agree with what they're doing and maybe even become involved with what they're doing, etc. And so again, for me, in that respect, where it harms things and others, no, I would say there's no compromise at all. I'm not interested. And I'm not interested in being bought off so that people feel good about what they're doing and their part destroying others and the environment. So again, this is where we see people like the president and all these other people, they're all bought off. They're fine with compromising, you see, because to them, they're gaining the created wealth of the world, which is worthless. I see the real awareness of the individual has the real value and supersedes all that, but this is the testing grounds. And we've decided to come here. We've decided to become involved because we need this to wake up. And at the same time, while we're here, we're making choices. So it just depends upon how long you want to stay and fool around. So when it comes to compromise, realistically, what makes sense? Does it make sense to just cut down the pollution of the world to like even 10% or 5%? That's still huge. It's still poisoning the world. Why does the world need any poison at all? Well, let's just cut back. How about that? Let's compromise. You want to do that? I'm not interested. So again, I can't control the situation, but for me presenting this, about people's, I'm pointing people to their real awareness, I don't see any compromise at all. Because then what you do is when you compromise, you are allowing yourself to stay in cause and effect creation. You want to stand real with no karma, no cause and effect? Stand real in your real awareness. That makes a difference, and life will support you. And no matter what you do, you do the best you can here. It'll compensate. It'll take care of you. But you got to recognize that. But if you compensate with anything that the reality of life is, then what you've done is you've given yourself over to the personal self. And guess what? Have fun dealing with the effects. Well, again, that's not the absolute. So anything that is said here, even myself or whatever, it is not the absolute. And even when you have real side experiences with the boys, it is not the absolute. There are variables, and there's always a new moment. Okay, one of the experiences that Claudia shared with me as we talk is that she saw Paul and Rebazar sitting at a table, a little round table, and they were playing poker. And she thought this was humorous to watch them playing poker. And so she kind of wonders what this meant. And, she at first said, well, I like the game of poker or whatever. And I said, well, I don't see it as like or dislike. It's not about that. What are they demonstrating to you? And that is that there's many views, but overall, it's like with what we're doing. And that is that, after they've presented certain things, after we've gone through certain experiences, then after that, they sit down there and they will do a demonstration like this. What's the idea of poker? It is gambling, isn't it? So what's the idea here that they're presenting? Everything is a gamble. In other words, you got to take the risk. So yes. So in other words, it's not 100%. Nothing is 100% in creation. And when it comes to compromising, I will not compromise the reality I'm presenting, but at the same time, while I'm in creation, yes, I will compromise certain things accordingly. Yes, I will drive a polluting car too. I will add to the pollution. There's a compromise. As an example, I produce waste and trash. I throw it in the trash can that has to be taken down, etc. Yes, I could eat the packaging that is produced. If I buy a bag of potato chips, let's say, I could eat the package. Well, of course, that's going to come out some way, one way or the other, if I live. So again, would it be better that I live here longer and present this? So again, yes, certain things are compromised. Again, it's not an absolute. And this is where when things are taken in accordance, the no compromising area I'm talking about, again, is with the real awareness. In creation, it becomes a particular. It's a give and take because you have cause and effect. So again, you want to learn to see the difference between creation and the reality of your real awareness and the real universes and the isness, your intent, all these things. Instead of, we've come up to where we mash everything together, all the five bodies, all the ideas. It's like, oh, we're this person, this is us, and all these attitudes and thinking and this and that. No, it's not. These are the varied parts. Just like in your computer, you have different programs running, but it all looks like the same thing. So you have all these different programs that support the speech, the hearing, the visual, etc. You got all these different programs running that support that, so it all equals one thing. So when we're looking at the computer screen, we're thinking, oh, it's that one thing. But we don't see everything that's behind it that's supporting it. And this is where the difference comes in, is to recognize all these different parts and how they apply so we can better handle and adjust in creation, cause and effect, because we're still here dealing with it. So you might say I'm giving you the absolutes, okay, but that's from the real universes. That's the only absolute there is the isness. There is no absolutes in creation. There cannot be, because it's cause and effect. There's always variables. And this is where the gambling idea, you take the gamble, you take the risk, just like when two people get married. You take the risk. It's like, oh, it all looks good, doesn't it? Well, I suggest you see the original The Heartbreak Kid movie with, oh, I forget who was in them, but it was really good. It was a comedy. But again, things are not as they appear to be, but it's all okay. You can adjust and compromise, etc. You know, it's like, yes, I'll put up with your snoring if you'll put up with mine. So there's a compromise. This is what takes place here. Yes, so again, I'm always referring to the real awareness. From there, that view outward sees everything, how it works, not from the personal side where it's like it thinks it knows everything, including life itself. And this is why the world is like it is, all distorted and screwed up, because you got all these little personal selves adding to the confusion of the group consciousness that's on Earth. So everything is agitation, distortion, maintenance, and everything else. Nobody knows what's going on, but everybody keeps asking questions about what life isn't. Yeah, so again, interesting where we're at. So that's from the real awareness, Charles. And yes, in creation, yes, of course, you have to compensate things, etc. Whatever the world is doing, that's what it's deciding. Again, look at the objective view. But the reality of the new presentation is a reference, is a real reference to the true reality life is, the all is, the isness. This becomes the difference. Look at what I'm presenting here according to what the world is presenting. Okay, so you have all these systems in the world look like a big deal, don't they? And what are they all presenting? Okay, so again, I don't see any compromise myself when it comes to this. I'm presenting the true reality life is, the isness, and they would like it to be, oh, well, you're just talking about God or something like that. See, they would want to compromise, and it's just as soon as you compromise, okay, and I'm sure a lot of people that even do this or the new you, they would be happy too. Oh, gee, it's like, let's all just be one big fellowship, okay? Well, then their control takes over. That's very real. That's what they want. They want an agreement. They do that friendly little cleverness. They want agreement. See, all they look for is agreement. And when you don't agree, they don't like that, so they try and figure other ways around that agreement. And they'll come around to the people or whatever, and they'll whisper things in their ear. Oh, well, you know, what Duane is talking about, that's just another word for another god, you see. And it will become like that. Just like ISIS, is. It was originally is. And in Atlantis and before that, that was a reality. That was the is. But all of a sudden, like I said before, yeah, why did Obama choose that? Of everything that he could have chosen, where he created his little military group in Texas, called it ISIS. Okay, why did he choose that? Well, it wouldn't be because I'm presenting the is and the all is, right? It couldn't be because of that. Does that look like a coincidence? So again, this becomes a challenge in creation. Okay, do we agree? Hey, did Jesus agree? You know, they hung him. They nailed him to the cross. They nailed Gandhi, everybody. They nailed him. Pythagoras, they burned his schools, etc. On and on and on. Did they agree? Did they just say, okay? Well, Galileo agreed. You know, he told them things that were going on, you know, in outer space and stuff, and the priestcrafts didn't like it. They were going to destroy him, okay? They wanted to agree, so he did. He didn't want to die, so he agreed, which is fine. And so when it comes to the point, if I'm faced with that, I'll just say, okay, whatever, you decide. You can have whatever you want. But you see, it doesn't change the reality of what is. See, again, they look for their personal agreements. So in the meantime, I'd rather be the risk-taker rebel and bug the world a little bit, you might say. I'm fine with that. And I'm, you know, whether there's more people stepping up or not, I just wait and see what happens because, again, it's free will. And even when people are given the opportunity, they decide, like everybody here. You're deciding every single moment. I've seen so many people come and go. And, you know, it just motivates me to focus even more because, again, I see what I see as so precious that the personal element, realistically, it's there, but I'll call you back, Robert. This comes first. And whatever people do, they do. This is how it is. This comes first, because if this doesn't come first, then it doesn't exist. It's just that simple. So how far will you compensate or agree to the world or whatever, etc.? The world that's been established, they have one agenda until they change that, is takeover. That's it. They don't see anything else. Yet they will come to you with a smiling face, and etc. Learn to see the intent. You buy those smiling faces? I don't. I look at the sun shining. It sees everything, you might say. So do the boys. And I do my best to, provide whatever it is. I'm very sincere, 100% sincere with everything I do. And that is that I try to bring this to people, but, they decide. And so they usually take advantage of that. So we're in a very interesting challenge here. And so, again, I don't look for the numbers. I'm amazed that anybody shows up. I really am. Because this is not easy. And especially with what's going on in the world is so distorted, so brainwashed, so dumbed down, poisoned, infected and everything else. People have a lot to deal with. The boys even said to me many times before, we like the cowboy and Indian days better. Yeah, they do. They don't like what's going on, but they have to deal with it because this is how it is. People have made choices. And this is what people don't see, the choices that they make. They really don't. You really have to learn to live now and be now, to recognize the choices that you're making every moment. And according to creation, and deciding to recognize the isness, because most people don't. They don't even hear themselves talk. They don't even know what they're saying. And what they do is, by the choices that they made, for the most part, they use the God idea as an excuse. Oh, well, something like, well, God created us, so, it's in God's hands what I decided. You see, and there's no such thing. It's all a cliche. You want to live by that? You want to live by these funny things and these cliches and these parables and all these things that equal nothing? I don't. I see the sun shining and I see it awesome. This morning, as I looked out my door, and I like to watch the birds and the butterflies. I mean, I'm like a little kid. That's like exciting. It's like, wow, look at that bird fly. It's just because it's surreal here as opposed to just people doing what they're doing. But I looked out my door just in time to see this little squirrel run across the street and up a palm tree. And it's just, when you see the reality and the innocence and the purity of the natural environment and even the little animals, etc., the birds, whatever, it's right there. But who sees it? People are too busy just doing their nonsense. And so, again, here's the challenge. I don't look for people stepping up. All I do is like the sun shining. The sun is not looking for anything. It just shines. And so while I'm presenting this, I'm also focused on this reality itself because I see that that's all there is. And I gear my life to that accordingly. And yet at the same time, I have to deal with the personal self and the physical body, house it and do the maintenance and everything, play this game, accordingly. And it doesn't matter to me, really. I try to do things and the funding, etc. Fine, I have these dreams, but if they come true or not, whatever, it doesn't matter. I see the bigger picture, this universal community, which I'll probably change that, probably be universal positioning, etc. And it'll baffle the world. Well, you know what? Again, the sun baffles the world. People don't understand that. And how many people even, consider the sun? They just figure, oh, it's a sunny day or it's not. And they don't even have to go outside because they just watch the news. Oh, it's going to be sunny today. Oh, it's a sunny day, but they're indoors all day watching TV and, doing what they're doing, whatever. So our situation here is very, very interesting. Again, that's the risk taker position, the challenge, etc. And people that do step up, Charles, that do become risk takers, All you can do is present this. I present it sincerely, but at the same time, I have fun with the complexity of it. I see and talk to individuals and help them sort out their own literal side so that they can get an objective view of what they've become so convinced by. But hey, if they keep making statements and want to be self-convinced, fine, I just step back. It's like, okay, have fun, but it's not that. It's so much better. But you got to see it. And so this is the awareness. And when you have that, and this is where this universal position comes in, that's all I focus on. That's my real focus. And the boys are right there too. They've all come into me, all the silent ones and everything. You can ask Claudia. She sees the experiences. We go through so much on the real side. This is where I ask Claudia to talk to certain people because I pick certain people that have the awareness to in some way recognize this. Because this is what I'm focused on, and they're backing me. And this will supersede everything, but you got to see it. So I'm going to constantly reiterate that. In the meantime, the world's going to do what it's going to do. We just do the best we can, like Kelsey. She's wonderful. She's set up these radio shows to talk to people. It's kind of like the different grades in school, first grade, second grade, third grade, so on. And this is where I had to back up from the writings to do the projects, because I see that people are not going to get the writings. They're not going to understand it. So they need something, and at the same time be involved in, to learn to work with the natural environment, not just a 9-to-5 boring job. And how many people will gear their life around that? Because most people have a good job. They get paid well. Hey, life is good. So they're just going to stay the same. Me, I'm the risk taker. I see more, and then I go for that. I want to create something that more so makes a better choice and more so of a benefit to what's going on here, because if it stays the same, then it's going to just get worse. Thinking that, it's all okay. This is what the world is thinking, that, we just keep doing the same thing, business as usual, and business will get better. Well, maybe the business will get better, but everything will get worse because of the business. See? So again, it's a decision, isn't it? So again, let's see who steps up. And yeah, it is huge, the real risk takers. But again, I don't look for them. I just present this the best I can. And we'll see who shows up, because it is a lot to it. And again, the world is always going to pressure us into compromising. And when it comes to this, in this real position, there's no compromise. But for the most part, they won't see it. And they'll be running around just like the movie and where Noah's building the boat. And, they criticized what he was doing, but when the flood came, all of a sudden they're screaming and yelling. It's like, see, you didn't prepare yourself, and those very few did. So that's kind of like it here. Those of you that have stepped up, this is what it's about, preparing yourself to get through what's coming up in creation, because you have to be able to handle it so you can keep that recognition going with your real self. And you're not altered or confused like many people who have come and gone and says, the heck with you, Duane, this or that, you're this or you're that. I ask them the question, what is it that I haven't done for you? What is it? You see? But they have all these ideas. Fine. Hey, go have fun. Again, this is how it is. It is just like Paul and Rebazar playing cards. It's a gamble. You take the risk. You're dealt with a particular hand. You deal with that hand. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to see it? How are you going to handle it? Yeah. Yes, thank you, everybody. This was fun. And thank you, Sandy and Bob, for showing up. You're very important. Thank you for sharing all that.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yes, it allows me to, it activates me. It always activates me to better define this for people, because there is so much through creation. What we see here is so minute, as opposed to what's really taking place. And so this is where we decide to start to have these adventures and see more or not. And again, it's always in the deciding. You can't forget, every moment you decide. The guides are there, okay, just like a tour bus, but you decide to get on. You must decide. So again, the old master and guru idea doesn't work. The master's taking care of this or God's taking care of it. No, you're the decider. And this is where, the world controllers have taught people to be passive and just simply, well, we'll decide for you and everything will be fine. Well, it really won't, will it, as the world gets worse? So we see this. And so in a way, I'm very concerned. I'm very sincere, and that is I would like to reach as many people as possible and at least give them the chance. There's no guarantee they will step up, but at least give them the chance. Go ahead. Go ahead. So anyhow, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. And tomorrow's Sandy and Bob show at 11, 1 o'clock their time.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll see you, and you guys can bring more fun stuff. And the kids, too. Wonderful.
Sure.
Yeah. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Bye.
Bye.